A lot of us get into gardening with houseplants. Hey, raise your hand if you've ever sprouted a carrot top on a windowsill, started an avocado plant from seed, or lovingly potted up a pothos. In fact, we may always be houseplant huggers at work and at home, whether we're in apartments, condos, or have a full-size yard. Today, passionate plant person and indoor gardener Chloe Fee tutors us on semi-hydro techniques and benefits based on her background in STEM. Chloe, it is so wonderful to finally meet you.
Thank you so much. And likewise, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today.
So what got you into houseplants?
I would say it's a familial connection. My maternal grandmother was huge on plants. She actually gave me my first plant at, I think I was 6 years old. It was a grow your own cabbage kit. And I was just so proud when, harvest time finally came and the cabbage was bigger than my little 6-year-old head. And it's a passion that started early. And ever since she willed her collection to me when she unfortunately passed away, I was left with this amazing, incredible collection of plants. And honestly, I've always enjoyed them, but ever since that point, I've really delved in and I haven't looked back.
That is so wonderful to have that kind of connection and to have heirloom plants. That's even more meaningful. Those are the plants that are really close to your heart. Not that they all aren't. And in fact, speaking of that, dare I ask, since it looks like a lot of your plants are listening in, what are your special favorites?
I really enjoy my anthurium, this is kind of the majority of them. I love the volutinous, dark, moody, dramatic leaves. And there's really no limits in how you can grow them. You can get these massive, this is one of my pride and joys. It's maybe 36 inches long, and I just love that they're very rewarding. If you take good care of them, they'll give you these fantastic, dramatic, stunning foliage. And I'm smitten.
Now, one of your planting techniques is semi-hydro, which is hydroculture. And so, first of all, what is that and why do you like it?
I'm going to introduce y'all to this substrate. So I use what's called Lechuza Pond, and this is just a bag of it. You can see it's got different rocks of different sizes and colors. But to break down what's in it, it's basically a combination of pumice, zeolite, and lava rock. And you can actually make it yourself. I'm a lazy plant parent now, so I buy it, but it's really easy to make yourself in whatever quantities you're looking for. But to me, I think the principal benefit is that when you use semi-hydro, you don't have to worry about water availability and the plant's needs misaligning. Something that I see a lot when I do my consultations with my followers and my plant pals is that people will often overwater or underwater their plants. These plants are endemic to a lot of rainforests where they're used to large volumes of water in very, very fast quantities. And they're not used to really sitting in like more of a heavy garden center variety potting soil. So sometimes when we, provide too much water or too little water and the substrate is inappropriate, we get something called root rot. And I find that semi-hydro kind of bypasses that possibility. You've got control over that because you have the wick. That's a pretty common technique in semi-hydro pot planters is you have a wick. So the moisture will travel up the wick and wet the soil or whatever substrate you have in the planter as it dries. So again, principal benefit for me is proper moisture availability for the plants without having to constantly be attending to them or guessing at what's going on.
Now, you've been using this word substrate. What does that mean?
Sure. So substrate is any type of growing medium. Potting soil, that could be sand.
You got the substrate, but then what? What is this with the wick? You put a wick in there?
This is actually Lechuza's planter. If this is they come with like planters, and this is the kind they call a mini Deltini. I like them because they're very glossy, very aesthetic, very nice on Instagram. And also it's convenient, but you can do this at home. All you need is basically a cup of sorts, one large holeless, and that's going to be, some sort of aperture or pot, which basically holds your level of water. And then you have another pot that's smaller that can fit inside of it that has some sort of wick, so that the moisture can travel up the wick when the plant has used up the available moisture in the substrate.
Where do you put the water?
This is the reservoir, and this top part happens to have holes in it. So if your top pot has holes in it, well, it'll drain into the reservoir pot. As long as where the water reaches in the reservoir isn't into that second smaller pot, you don't have to worry about where that water level is. Some people will actually just take out this portion, however, and just fill the reservoir and stick it back in, because this is actually where the plant sits. So you can technically remove this willy-nilly if you'd like. If I did that, I'd make quite a mess. So I try to just water top down.
But then how do you know when it's time to replace the water? Is there a level meter or something on there, or do you just check it like you would any plant?
Right. So in the Lechuza pots and other self-watering pots, there's like a billion of them. I don't want anyone to think this is the only thing out there, because there's tons of it out there. But this one has a water level indicator. So minimum and maximum. And I'm sure there are DIY versions of that indicator, but the ones that I have in the DIY pots that I made don't have that. I just use a clear reservoir so I can see where the water level is. Okay, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and show y'all how this works by potting up something for y'all. This is let's see, a Melanochrysum, Philodendron Melanochrysum. Got some pretty okay roots here, but I'm looking to, get that same healthy fuzz that I saw in the Anthurium. And I think Lechuza is an excellent way to do that. So I'm gonna start by taking the bag. They actually, with the planters, they send you a bag of substrate. So you don't have to worry about trying to pot something without the substrate. So I like to put a little bit of a base layer. And I'll show you guys. It's maybe 1.5 centimeters up into the pot. I don't really like the roots to sit directly on the base of a pot. I think that's just good planting for any substrate or any pot type. And I'm gonna take that here. I know water is a controversial rooting material. I actually just soak them in water a lot of times before transitioning to semi-hydro. I use a root, it's kind of a root growth support chemical called liquid gold. I'm a really big fan of it. I just put a drop or two of it in the water, let them sit for a couple hours, maybe overnight if it really needs to be rehabbed. And then you just take the rest of the bag and you pour the rest of the contents until the plant itself is stable. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. There, voila. I actually like to top this off with moss because I find that moss, one, can encourage additional aerial root development, and is also a nice way to keep higher humidity levels locally around your plant. But yeah, she's all potted up and looking good, and can't wait to see how she develops in a couple months.
Now, are you going to water her right now, or do you, since she's been hydrated, do you wait?
I actually would water right now, and I always have water. A little indicator on this planter that will tell me when I've reached a high level on the water reservoir. So we're probably about 75% up to max, and I'm going to let it do its thing with that. I don't usually water to max because again, there's that period of transition and you don't want the roots that are there to feel like they're drowning.
Now, how do you know when to water it again? Do you wait for that indicator to come all the way down, or 50%, or does it depend on the plant? Or
plants give us visual cues when they're, probably a little bit low on water. But I generally, there is a point of adjustment when you plant into the Lechuza planter. So I actually manually check for the first 2.5 months. And then from that point on, I let the indicator tell me what how dry that substrate or that reservoir really is. It's really simple because again, like you can pop the top component out of the reservoir, but if you just use a clear reservoir, like even a mason jar or something, you can clearly see. I think that's one of the bigger advantages of a clear growing container is you can see how root development is going as well as what the moisture is like.
What about the old, the thing you take a bamboo skewer or your finger or something and put it in?
It doesn't necessarily work with Lechuza because where moisture is in the substrate, so you might have a full reservoir, but the top of the substrate's not wet. Another incredible benefit of semi-hydro techniques, Lechuza specifically, would be root development. I'm gonna give you guys a close up there. I love how they develop so quickly. I actually took this as a stump from this plant here. So this is its baby. And not only has it gone from, one shallow feeder root to just this incredible root system here in maybe 2 months, which is really awesome. And it's not something I've experienced when using soil mediums, especially for anthurium. So this is, really incredible growth. And I like that you have, a lot of flexibility with feeding and not having to worry about mineral buildup quite in the same way that you would with leca or even in soil. Like if you're growing in terracotta, you don't have to worry about the same, salt buildup issues, in my opinion, because you can flush it a lot easier.
And are you using that even for these monster guys or your monsteras?
Monstera are probably the last ones that I haven't converted quite yet. The ones that I still have, they're very rare when you're converting from, soil-based substrate to semi-hydro. There is kind of a natural loss in root volume during that transition. And for me, I'm a little too nervous to try to even put them in that risk, even though I'm sure that they would thrive in it, as 90% of the collection I have is in it. But I think I still want to just kind of take my time with it. I think I want to put a non-variegated monstera in it first, just see how that goes, and then maybe the other ones.
That's what gardening is all about, experimenting.
Exactly. So, baby steps. And then if I get a positive result from my experimentation, I will do more.
Tell us about your grow light.
You can actually change the aperture size of the grow light. So if, for example, you have a space like mine where you need kind of a wider scope of light, like light needs to kind of be in a wider area, you can adjust that diameter so it's larger. Or if you need if you have just one large plant that you're trying to get all the light onto, you can narrow it. So I like that ability to customize and kind of tailor the light to what I need and what I've got going on. I love smart technology. I used to go and manually turn on all of my plant lights, and at about 250 houseplants, I decided that was too much effort. So I started investing in smart plugs and things that could connect to my phone so that if I wanted to turn on my lights, while I'm at work or turn them off before I get home, I could do that at a touch of a button.
We hear a lot about the benefits of gardening, especially the past year and a half, whether it's outside or inside, especially if we're working from home. You have a science background and a neuroscience background, and what do you find impacts people?
From a scientific perspective, there are actually several published peer-reviewed studies that indicate that, having houseplants, that indoor houseplant interaction can lower stress levels and, promote, other key components or indicators of wellness. And just seeing it in the houseplant community, with the pandemic and everything, I've seen an influx of new plant parents, and just watching them use plants as a space and as a medium for peace and self-reflection and calm has been really rewarding. That's what plants have always been for me, is a a haven, a place of respite, and to see other people get into that too as an escape has been really, really lovely. So that's more of an anecdotal point there, but I've seen it. I've seen people go, I'm just so glad I have these cute little plants to come home to, and I love plant shopping, and maybe that's more of a retail therapy effect at play, but I just know that having something to care for that's so rewarding and lovely has to be some type of positive.
I've become a super fan of your Instagram feed at Monstera Maven. You do these plant question and answers. You provide a lot of cute videos. You provide a lot of valuable information and a lot of interaction with your followers. And I learned so much. And you have such a way to energize. If I'm doing this maybe in the evening, and I'm, feeling a little bit tired, and I watch and say, oh, wow, yeah, now I'm excited again about plants, and I learned this new thing. So tell us how you got into that, why you got into that.
So maybe about 3 years ago, it's been a while, a couple of years ago, a friend of mine had started their Plantstagram. That's what we call it in the community. And they were telling me how exciting and awesome it was to just take pictures of their collection, put it online, and interact with other collectors all over the globe. And so on a whim, I just decided, you know what, I think I want to do that. I feel like it's really important to provide knowledge. I was really lucky to get into the community when a lot of the longest standing members of the houseplant community were willing to share their knowledge, with newcomers, and were really open to newcomers kind of before, prices went crazy and everything changed for them. So I decided that it was important for me to pass that knowledge on. And I like to think of my Instagram platform as a means for me to grow with people, because I'm not an expert. There are certainly gaps in my own knowledge that I'm trying to deepen every day. And so I definitely wanted to share what I've learned so that people don't make mistakes that I made very early on, but also to learn from people too, because, there's always something amazing people are trying out or, experimenting with. And I think that's fun to try and learn new things. I love plant questions. So if you do find yourself curious about semi-hydro or in need of a care question or in need of some care tips or answers, I actually do a consultation service, and I do have shorter sessions as well as 30-minute to an hour. If you need something in depth, we Zoom and we talk one-on-one. I look at everything that you're doing, where you're growing, and we come up with a solution and an action plan for whatever is ailing you and your plants.
Well, thank you so much, Chloe. This has been so much fun, and I look forward to doing more with you with CDG. And until then, watching your Instagram at Monstera Maven. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for your time today. Really enjoyed it.